everyone, I'm Ari here with Rachel and we're your hosts for the Merry Writer podcast. This week we're on episode 305 asking what should you consider when picking an editor? Before we start, don't forget to visit and follow our coffee page. You can access lots of free goodies, and if you're in a position to support us financially, you can become a Merry Writer for just $2 a month and get exclusive monthly content. Everything earned on coffee goes into keeping the show going, and we really do appreciate any support. Okay, let's get to the episode. I'm going to start with the disclaimer. These are our thoughts and opinions based on our own experiences and preferences. These are what we think writers should consider when picking an editor.
And by we, Ari mostly means herself. I'm going to be just chiming in here every once in a while. Hi, guys.
Felt like she just threw me under the bus there. Thanks for that.
That wasn't meant to throw you under the bus. That was just because you actually wrote a good amount of notes that I do agree with. So I'm just not the one saying it.
Okay, let's start with one of the bigger ones, which I think is important. Qualification. And I mean actual qualification. And no, not just an English and or creative writing degree. That does not an editor make, in my opinion. So make sure your editor has editing specific qualifications. There are editing courses, qualifications, and certifications you can get. Those are what you're looking for. I'll be honest, I always get a little wary whenever I see an author, worse if it's a new author, suddenly offering editing services. If they haven't stated their qualifications on their website or platform, ask them. If they get shirty with you or refuse to say, or they just give you the, I got an English degree or a creative writing degree, might be a pass. Just because you got an English degree, just because you're a writer, does not make you an editor. There was a push a while ago on like how authors can make more money, because obviously book sales are not always the easiest way to make money, especially as new authors. And there was a big push of like, oh yeah, you just branch out, you know, whether it's a YouTube channel with ads or courses and workshops, that's fine. But editing became a big one that sort of spiraled out with a lot of people, and everyone started offering editing. And it's like, just because you are a writer doesn't make you an editor. Just because you had an editor come and look at your work and you saw how they did it does not mean you're going to be a good editor. That's why a qualification is important. A qualified editor is worth their weight in gold.
I will say, I have an English degree, and you don't learn about editing in creative writing courses. You read short stories and you analyze them. There was actually very little creative writing and editing in those courses throughout my degree. It absolutely was not at all what I thought it was. And obviously, that's me speaking from experience. It depends on the college, university, professor, specific courses that you take, whatever. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows like it sounds. When you say that you have a creative writing degree, that doesn't even make you an author. Sorry, not sorry. But I mean, it's true. Everything that Ari is saying is absolutely true. They need to be trained in editing, not just necessarily have the education behind it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can probably, if you have a proofreader, having an English degree, having a good grasp of English or whatever language you're writing in, let's not be assuming everyone's writing in English, or having a good grasp of grammar and sentence structure and punctuation, that's good for a proofreader. But if we're talking an editor, especially dev edits and things like that and copy and that, you want someone who really knows their stuff. Very important. Okay, next one. Genre is important. What genre does your editor work in? Because not every editor covers all genres. In fact, I think most of them don't. They'll usually have ones they specifically prefer. They may have some extras, and then they usually have ones they do not want to touch. So make sure you check to see what they cover. And obviously, if you have a list of different editors, you might find one that has a more preference to what you're writing. And that can be really good, as long as they have all the other things as well.
And a good thing to note is, assuming that they have a portfolio and they have a list of what books that they've worked on in the past on their website, take a look at books that are in your genre that they've edited before and get it from your library or buy it from Amazon or your local bookstore or wherever and give it a read and see how good the editing actually is. I mean, I'm not saying that, they're bad or anything like that, but I think that's a good example to see past things that they've already worked on. It's not enough just to look at their portfolio and say, wow, they've edited over 200 books. Look into a couple of them and read them and see what their editing style is actually like, and make sure that you actually agree with a lot of the changes that are made in the book and so on and so forth. Hopefully that made sense.
It did. I will make one caveat to that. Obviously, everyone has to start somewhere, and you may end up finding a good editor, but they have a limited portfolio. Most people with any sort of service, if you're starting out, they usually do some cheaper offers or some freebies. I'm not saying that you should be asking or expecting any of that, but most people who come into the service industry in something like that, if they're like a freelance editor, will probably offer to do free things for a few people to get them a portfolio. Again, I'm not saying you should go asking for that, but if you've got someone with no portfolio, it's not a red flag, but it's like, how well do you know how they're going to do if they've got nothing and they're hoping to charge you a large amount? So yes, you can go with a new editor, one who's not done it very often, which would mean they don't have much of a portfolio, but they should have something. Just a thought.
No, that's a good point. And I mean, it is quality over quantity. So don't find an editor that has a wide portfolio and say, oh, wow, they must be the best, because that doesn't necessarily mean they are the best for you and the best for whatever book you're writing. So yeah, everything I already said is true. I concur.
I always like it when you do that. Okay, the next one is contract. This is not in order. It should have been in order, but I've just realized it's not. Editing, shocker, costs money. And it can cost a lot of money, especially depending on what you need. Most authors will go for one to two to three edits. That usually starts with a dev, then a line or a copy edit, or both, and a proofread, right? So there's usually multiple types of edits. And even if you just go for one, it's still quite a lot of money. So you should not be entering into any editing service willy-nilly on somebody's nod and a smile, even if they're your friend. I don't care if they're your friend. If they've got the qualifications and they're hiring and you're hiring them, you need a contract. You need something in writing. Don't be smiling and like, yeah, everything's fine. No. And it should not just be an email or a DM of what's agreed. You want a clean and clear contract that lays out exactly what you're getting in terms of service, the cost, what is expected of them, what is expected of you. You also need to have things that, such as like refunds and cancellation policies. You don't want someone having it hidden away, saying that they can just cancel the contract and not give you your money back, which has been seen in people's contracts. So yeah, that's not good. That also adds to read the contract if they give you a contract. Just because they have one doesn't mean it's like, oh yeah, they're professional. Make sure you read it very carefully. It's even better if they will put a timeline of the work listed in the contract. I'm going to add a little extra. Be wary if there is a super fast time turnaround, especially if you've got a bit of a chunker of a book or they have quite a full schedule. Why is it so fast? You know, if it's like, yeah, I can do a dev edit in like a week on your 200,000 word essay, 200,000 word novel. Nope, that is not good. You don't want that. That's too quick. Too quick. As with any contract, it should be signed. They should sign it and date it, and you should sign it and date it, and then you should get a copy with your signature and the date on it as well. You also want to make sure there is a termination clause, because sometimes things don't work out and it doesn't always have to be someone's fault, but you need to feel comfortable with your editor and they need to feel comfortable with you. Also, other situations can come up. So if either of you feels like it's not a good fit or something happens and it needs to end, you need to have a termination clause, and that's really useful. So make sure that's in there. And now I know people get a bit weird with contracts. It's like, oh, it's really weird and legal. It's like, yeah, it is. It's important. They're there to protect everybody. So read them very carefully before signing. If anything seems a bit odd or you're not sure what it means or you're not sure if it's right, talk to the editor. If you're really not sure, talk to somebody in a legal capacity. And I appreciate that's not always something that's easy and not always something that's accessible to everyone due to cost, but See if you can find someone who's worked with contracts before. See if you've got anyone in the family or friends or anyone you can discuss things with. You know, you don't want to sign your life away, but you need to be signing something. A little extra, watch out for anything where there's heavy buzzwords and jargon, and make sure you understand what all of that means. But yeah, so if your editor has no contract for the service, or a weird contract, or a heavy jargon, missing important clauses contract, pass.
I know it sounds weird to have a contract for an editor for your book, but you got to keep in mind that if you're writing a book with the intent of publishing it, then it is a business. This is your work, this is your money. You want to have a contract and make sure both you and your editor work well together and that you're both on the same page. And I do agree with Ari that obviously you yourself need to read the contract, but it's a good idea to get a second pair of eyes on it as well, just in case. And if you can't afford to hire a lawyer or anyone who understands contracts, you probably have a family member or friend that has a better understanding of that stuff than you do, or maybe not, but still having a fresh set of eyes on it. I have a friend who's an accountant and he just understands that stuff because he's smart like that. So usually I ask his opinion and he has no problem just helping me out. And I'm sure you probably have somebody in your life that is like that. So just things to keep in mind.
You can even reach out to the author community, find someone who's had an editor where they've had a contract and just reach out. Again, most authors are pretty nice people, or most writers are willing to help other people. So just a simple, quick message saying, hey, I'm just querying about something or curious. That's why we have this community, to be helpful to each other.
That's a good point, especially since I feel like a lot of times editors are found through word of mouth anyway. So chances are, if you write fantasy and you find an editor that wrote your that edited your friend's fantasy book, then you could always just ask them about the process too. And obviously be open and honest with the editor and don't be afraid to ask them follow-up questions about the contract and stuff, because if they're dodgy about any follow-up questions, then there's probably something wrong. But that's a good clue as well. Just be open and honest about it with them.
Yeah, that's a perfect red flag if they're being really like, why? What do you want to know? What's wrong with it? It's fine, just sign it. It's like, nope, that's dodgy. Yeah, I think use your initiative for most of it. Read as much as you can and be aware that it is a legally binding contract when you sign things. So don't just, yay, scribble it down. Okay, next. Cost, kind of important. You should obviously have a very clear understanding of what costs the services are. And if there's any additional fees, these can be things like late fees, cancellation fees, processing fees. If your editor is in a different country and you have to send money to them, depending how you send it, you will get extra charges. Like my editor is in a different country to me, so when I send the fees to her, I always get an extra charge, and it's a non-sterling charge because I'm sending it to America with US dollars. So that's like another processing fee. So I have to account for that. The problem with that is exchange rates change. Different platforms charge differently. So it's not always something you can plan for, but be aware that that will happen, unless obviously your editor's in the same country and use the same currency. Some editors offer bundle packages that will need to list things clearly and be really sure on what you're getting in each package. Do not just sort of breeze through assuming anything. Don't do that. Some offer payment plans that you can pay in installments. All of this should be clear. It should be in the contract. It should be in the discussion with your editor before you start getting a contract. I really can't say this enough. Everything should be detailed. Everything should be explained. You shouldn't have any weird misc fee or, anything like that. Everything should come with transparency. And if not, why not? I think the ones who offer bundles, most editors that I saw when I was looking for editors, they'll have bundle packages. And the whole point of a bundle is to give you a discount because you're buying multiple things. But they usually have a list of the individual services. And then you can see the discount you can get. Or you can think, I don't need all that. I just need those two. So yeah, be clear about the cost. Be aware of pricing regarding the fact that prices change. Usually every year things can go up. Make sure you're looking at the right price list. If you're looking at a price list that says 2002 or 2022, double check that that's the accurate one and that there isn't another one that they hid somewhere that you missed, because you might be signing up saying, yeah, that's the right one, and it's not. yeah, little things about that.
Oh my God, that's such a good point, though, to if their website isn't even up to date. I mean, a huge skill you want in an editor is attention to detail and organization. If they can't even keep their website and their prices up to date, then that's probably an issue. Not necessarily, not quite a red flag, but still something to keep in mind. I also wanted to add, just with costs in general, that you got to keep in mind that some editors will charge per word. Most of them will charge per word, but others do charge by the hour. So you can kind of sort of budget accordingly so that you can cover the cost for either or depending. And I mean, normally with their price list, they'll say that they charge by word or by hour or whatever, so you'll be able to budget. Because obviously, before you look for an editor, you should budget, do your research on what the average cost is of a developmental editor, of a proofreader, etc., and make sure that you have the money or you'll be able to get the money for payment plans or whatever, because obviously you don't want to stiff the editor and it's a working relationship. You need to do your part while they do their part.
Yeah, that is important. I think that's it. I think sometimes you don't realize how expensive it can be, especially if you have multiple edits. And depending on what you write, especially if you write a lot or you have a big book or a lot of like detail, like world building, it can be quite important to get multiple types of edits. And it builds that price is so expensive, which is why we talk about a contract, because editing packages can still run into the thousands, even just over 1,000. It's like, that's a lot of money for most people. So yeah, you need to make sure you can budget, and you need to make sure you're protected in a contract, because nobody wants to lose that kind of money ever. Okay, so we've covered contract, we've covered cost. Let's talk about service. I sort of mentioned this a little bit a minute ago, but your editor should have somewhere, whether it's a website or another type of platform or even a PDF, they should have their services listed with the costs easy to view. I will say there's obviously that point where sometimes it's like price on request, because if you're working by the word, or they might have a limit. I know a number of editors say like they'll go up to like 100,000 words, and then anything over that, it's like you need to contact me because it's like a custom edit. But there should be something that's got pricing on, because like editing covers a lot. We've talked about this. You've got developmental edit or structural edit. That usually comes first. Then a copy and line edit. They're usually done together, or if not, I think it's the line edit first, then the copy edit, and then finally you've got a proofread. Now, not all editors offer this, because again, depending on qualifications, they might not be trained for all that. Most of them seem to offer packages that include those or have different ones, because not everyone needs all of them. But again, most editors offer discounts on packages, which can be really good savings. In fact, a lot of editors these days add other things in, including like formatting and ARC distribution and everything. So be aware of all the services that they offer, can help you with your budgeting, but you should be able to see that. You shouldn't have to message them for them to then tell you personally what is going to cost and what services are available. Because when things like that happen and nothing's on their page and you have to get it directly, then it becomes, are you charging me more than the last person? Is it all very individual, which I understand why that can be sometimes, but it also makes me feel a little ick.
Yeah, no, I like it when they have their detailed services listed. When I got quotes from potential proofreaders for Happily Ever Afterlife, they came back and told me, to be clear, a proofread consists of A, B, and C, not X, Y, and Z. And I appreciated them clarifying that, even though I already knew that. But it basically shows that they know what they're doing and they want full transparency with you to ensure that you also know what they're doing, because I'm sure they say that because they probably have had people that said, "Hey, I hired you for a proofread. Why didn't you develop my character for me?" I'm sure they have had issues like that. So it's good when they are transparent and it's like, if you want just a proofread, this is what you're paying for, this is what you're getting, and that's it. Just to be clear. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah, let's be honest, there's always someone who doesn't read the details. This is why we're pushing about it. Anyone who's transparent with the services and costs, that is always a good sign. Not saying it's the best sign, obviously, might still be full of red flags, there might be no contract, but yeah, it definitely helps. Okay. Oh, I had to add this one. I had to. AI usage. You knew it was coming, people. Seriously. Because it's not just people using AI to write or draw, and I say that with my eyes rolling in the back of my head and a sneer on my face. People use AI to edit as well. So if you don't want your manuscript to be put through an AI model, you need to make sure your editor has a really clear AI clause in their contract. They need to state very clearly in the contract that you're going to sign and they're going to sign that they do not use AI in their editing. Because who the hell wants to pay that kind of money for someone to put it through a machine that does a piss poor job? That's not what you're paying for. You're paying for human ability, human eyes, human qualifications, not some shitty bot that doesn't know what it's doing. Yeah. And again, if it's not mentioned, ask. And then make sure it's included in that contract, that legally binding contract. That's what you need to do. I still find, I've got my editor now, but I still go and look and find artists that have nothing mentioned about whether they're AI or not. And to be fair, there's so many sneaky ways of doing it now. Some people do like base AI and then draw over the top of it. So you have to be very clear. And yes, people can lie, but at least if you have things in writing, you're in a little bit safer position. So you need to be asking people, querying this, and getting it in writing, unless you're okay with AI.
I have nothing to add to that because y'all know I concur. So
We are getting close to the end, but there are still things. I think the thing is, I think because it's such a big expense, it's one of the biggest expenses an author goes through. Yes, you can pay a lot for your cover. Yes, you can pay a lot for if you do like a formatter or you want to do marketing, you want to pay for marketing. But I still think the biggest cost is your editor. And that's why it's important to check and have as many green flags as you can. So the next one is samples. Most editors are willing to offer sample edits. Now, it could be just a few pages, it could be a few chapters. That way, they get to see your style and you get to see their style and the sort of thing they catch. Not everyone lists these. So you, again, be prepared to ask your editor to see if that's something they would be willing to offer. And if they're not willing to give you a sample, consider passing because you might be dropping thousands on someone who is not that good.
yeah, when I got quotes from two proofreaders, I didn't ask for samples or anything like that because I went through Reedsy Marketplace. So it was my first time going through there and I didn't really understand the process. So when I sent them the brief and asked for quotes, and one got back to me and told me her process for if she got hired, and the other gave me her process and also a sample proof of the first page from the sample I sent. And to be honest, that sample was what sold me to hire her because I was like, oh, the other one sounded really good too, but I can actually see what this one, I'm basically seeing her in action. So it helps.
That was really good that even though you didn't ask, that she still thought that was a good thing to do. I'll show how good I am rather than just tell someone, look, it's show, don't tell. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's worth it. It's worth it to get that sample edit, even if it's just a page.
Yeah, I think it should be something. Obviously, don't go stupid with it. Don't be expecting them to do a sample edit of like 10 chapters. That's ridiculous. Some samples will be charged for, but it'll be a very small amount. Again, depends on the different editor. It depends on what you accept and everything. But I think most editors offer a sample, and I think it's a good idea.
It is. And the other thing is, too, it helps you out in the long run, especially if they charge per word, because when she gave me that sample edit, she told me to fix something that I knew was a recurring mistake throughout my entire manuscript. So after I hired her and before I sent her the final manuscript, I made those changes from the sample edit, and then I went through the rest of the manuscript and I made similar changes. So it was actually less for her to work on. I said by the word, I meant by the hour. So it took her less time because she actually did charge by the hour. So it worked out well.
That's really cool, yeah. So yeah, something small like that, and it still catches it. So yeah, it's important. If you can, it's a good thing to have samples. They should be open with their clients. And I have to say, I think I've been watching too many videos and it's been stressing me out, but I cannot count how many marketers and course creators and even some editors I have seen online where they state that they work with X number of clients. Usually it's like, oh, I've got X number of clients and they're all like six-figure authors and they're bestsellers, and they never mention them at all. And it's like, why are you making such a big deal about how many clients you work with if you're not going to even state them? And yeah, you could say, well, it's privacy and everything. But you're going to be mentioned in the book anyway, because again, that's often what's part of the contract. You need to list the editor in your book. So it's not a big secret that you did that unless you're lying and your name isn't in their book because you're not their editor or their whatever. If they're doing information or talking about something or they're talking about a book, but they're not tagging the client in, the other author, why not? Is it just coming across like a bookstagram rather than a this was somebody's work I edited? That's a little bit dodgy. A good editor won't try and hide their clients from you. If you want to talk to an existing client, that shouldn't be a problem. And yes, of course, the editor will need to get permission from that person to see if they're willing to share contact details and whether they're willing to speak to you. Again, most authors are not dicks. They're willing to be supportive and thoughtful. So if someone came to me, if my editor came to me and said, I've got a new client, they want to speak to someone who's worked with me, can I share their contact details with you? Would you reach out and speak to them? And I'd be like, yes, here's my Instagram. Get them to DM me. I have no problem talking about you. Blah, blah, blah. Again, not everyone will, but I think most people would. And if they're hiding all their clients and everything's a big secret, then it does make you think, do they have any clients? That was really high pitched.
I have nothing to add to that. See, keep going.
We've still got more. I am so sorry, but it's an important episode. So we've told you what things to look out for: cost, transparency, contract, AI, things like that. So what should you not want to see in an editor? Because we've got to have a be aware section. You want to avoid any editor, in fact, any person marketing anyone who claims that you'll definitely get picked up by an agent and you will definitely get a traditional publishing deal or you will definitely make this much money, blah, blah, blah. Bollocks. No, you won't. You might, but they can't guarantee that. As I said, I'm going to keep harping on. If they don't have a contract, that's not good. If they are terrible or non-existent with their communication, there should always be a communication element. Yes, you've got to give people time. Time zones are a thing. People are working, so you need to be flexible. But if they're going days and days without responding to your questions, as long as you're not being stupid and sending excessive amount of questions, that's not good. You should be able to contact them. They're working for you, they're working with you. That should be a thing. Broken promises, such as giving deadlines and constantly changing them. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to be a dick. Things can come up. Things happen. Sometimes we have to move things around. I've said the word things too many times. I need an editor on my own script, on my own mouth. But it keeps happening and it's kind of last minute, or there's always some kind of, I don't want to say a weak excuse, but you know what I mean. That is a red flag because it suggests that they're not that they're not prioritizing you. No one's saying you have to be prioritized, but it sounds like they're not giving you anything. So that's not good. If they don't return your manuscript with inline notes, now don't get me wrong, you have to pay. You have to pay your full bill for them to send you the work. No one's sending it you without having to pay your full bill. But once you've done that, you should receive your manuscript back with inline notes. And if you don't, that's not good. Unless they said they're not going to do that. But why would they not do that? That's important. If they give limited, dismissive, or mean feedback without mentioning anything positive or anything constructive, that's bad. You don't want someone just bullying you about your story. They should be able to point out the flaws, but it should be done professionally, politely, and it should be with constructive criticism. If it's not, then they're just mean. Why would you do that? Again, I'm going to add a little caveat. They should be able to point out if something is wrong. And if you're a little thin-skinned about that and you feel personally attacked, you might need to just think about it, take a breath, step back. Are they being mean or are they being constructive and you're just a little upset because you really like that scene or that character? That's a little extra. It's a bit of a weird one. But if they reach out to you first, like via DM, and yes, I get it, everyone has to start somewhere, but I would be wary of anyone popping into my comments or my DMs to share their services. Let's be honest, we get it all the time. Most new editors will take on a few clients, as I said earlier, either at a discount or just free, just to get themselves a portfolio. They might reach out and say, hi, I'm trying to build up my business. Would you be willing to let me edit the first 20 chapters, 20 pages, something, just so they can show some skill? as I said, this does not mean you should be reaching out to a new editor asking for free edits. Don't be rude and tacky. Don't be that guy. It's yuck. But if they reach out to you, like through a DM, and they're doing the hard sell, and there's lots of offers that are running out, back away. Try not to fall for the FOMO. That fear of missing out is just like hard-brained into our lizard brain, isn't it? It's just in there, hardwired into our lizard brain. Don't fall for it because you're going to be paying thousands. Even if it's hundreds, that's still a lot of money. Nobody wants to deal with that. So yeah, don't be caught up with the time's running out, this limited offer if you join now. Nope. And again, I'm going to say it because I'm just a broken record. The main rule: do not give anybody any money without a signed contract. Make sure it's paid in a safe manner in case something goes wrong. Don't use some weird payment transfer you've never heard of. It needs to be something that protects you. Again, not everyone has it, but if you have a credit card and you're not going to get hit with a massive fee, credit cards protect you in certain ways. Use a protected system that will help you if something goes awry and it turns out that editor is actually a dodgy person and a giant red flag and you just miss them. Don't be putting cash in an envelope and sending it, things like that. Okay, this is a really long episode. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good information. I mean, overall, working with an editor is not rocket science, and we're not trying to deter anybody away from working with an editor, obviously, because it's important. But you do need to consider that you're publishing a book is a business, and when working with an editor, it's not just two writer friends helping each other out. It's a transaction, it's a business deal, it's a negotiation. So you need to think like a business person when it comes to doing that stuff, and you need to protect yourself, and you just need to be smart about who you work with in general. So use your best judgment when it comes to anything, looking for editors, working with them, implementing their changes, whatnot, and it'll all work out.
Yeah, I concur. And I think that's actually kind of a good wrap for that. So, because I don't want to talk anymore. It's a long episode and I just feel like I've just been on and on. So let's hear your thoughts. What do you consider when looking for an editor? If you've hired an editor in the past, let us know. If you are looking for an editor or eventually will be looking for an editor, does any of this help? Is there anything you think we missed that you want to add to it? Take it on. Put it in the comments so we can chat about it. Remember, we do release new episodes every Wednesday. Next week, we are discussing book recs to help boost your writing. To ensure you don't miss it, hit the subscribe button on your way out. If you'd like to learn more about us, check out our website at themerrywriterpodcast.podbean.com and our coffee page for more content. Thanks for listening to the Merry Writer Podcast, and we'll see you next week. This podcast is brought to you by Writing Goals. We set too many. The music titled Inspired is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons 4.0.